Hi, I'm Josh with the Taste of Home Test Kitchen. I'm going to be talking about proofing bread dough. What is proofing? Well, proofing is just another word for letting your dough rise. What's happening as your dough rises or proofs is that the yeast inside of your dough is releasing gas bubbles, and those gas bubbles are getting trapped in the dough, causing it to puff, which is a good thing. It gives your bread that wonderful light texture. So once your dough has been kneaded and it's ready to go into its proofing bowl, just give that bowl a real thin coating of oil. Toss the dough in that oil to give it an even coating all around. And as the dough rises or proofs, the oil will keep the dough from sticking to the sides of the bowl. Also, that thin coating of oil on the top will help keep the dough from drying out as it proofs. So when choosing a bowl or a proofing vessel for my bread dough, I like to choose one that's large enough to let the dough rise without touching the surface covering of that damp towel or that plastic wrap, because sometimes it can stick, and when you pull it back it can actually deflate your dough or kind of just be messy. So what is the ideal environment for your dough to rise or proof in? Well, your dough needs a warm, humid environment. Now this kitchen is warm enough on its own to let the dough rise properly on the counter, just sitting out here with a damp cloth on the top. The reason you want to cover your dough with a damp cloth is that it keeps the surface of the dough from drying out. Now, if you do find that your kitchen is a little bit on the cool side, just transfer your bowl to your oven. All you have to do is turn on your oven light, and the heat from the oven light will create a warm environment. Alternatively, you can put a pan on the rack below where your bread dough is rising and pour some boiling water into it. And again, the steam and the heat from that boiling water in that pan will create that nice warm environment for your dough to rise. How do you know when your bread dough is risen to the proper amount? Well, you can use your eyes and you can use your sense of touch. I like to use a piece of tape on the outside of the bowl, just like this piece of masking tape here, and that's a good visual indicator of when your dough has risen to about double the size. You can also use your sense of touch. When you press an underproofed dough, the indentation will remain down and not spring back much at all. On a properly proofed dough, when you press, the dough should feel soft, and the indentation from your fingers should spring back about halfway or so. On an overproofed dough, when you press down with your fingers, it might actually deflate the dough. Now, if you find that your dough is underproofed after you've done your poke test and you notice that it hasn't doubled in size, all that it needs is just a little bit more time to rise. Now, if you try to bake a loaf of bread that's been underproofed, it'll break up pretty dense. Now, on the other hand, if you found that your dough has overproofed, don't be discouraged. You can usually still save that dough. Just punch it down, reshape it, and let it rise a third time. Most of the yeasts that you find in your grocery store, Active Dry or Instant, have about 3 rises in them before the yeast has been spent. If you put an overproofed dough into the oven to bake, it will rise up dramatically and then deflate because there's too many large air bubbles inside that dough. I hope you are encouraged to bake your own fresh bread at home after learning about proofing dough. There's hardly anything more rewarding. Thanks for watching.